Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Susan Howards, a local Brookline attorney with a national practice that focuses on domestic violence. I represent victims and I defend batterers. It's been 30 years that I've been doing this, and we have finally gotten domestic violence to be a crime, and we have resources available. But something very unusual came to my attention about 2 months ago, and I am going to introduce Jack and Michelle to tell you about their fabulous program that is geared toward batterers getting help before they do something they regret. Okay, Jack, do you want to start?
Sure. My name is Jack Patrissi. I'm so happy to be here. And like you, Susan, I've been in the field since the late 1900s, 33 years going, started as an advocate for trafficking survivors. And then about 10 years in, I started working with people who cause harm in intimate partnerships. And this is a sea change in our field. We are the first in the nation, and we're working with 11 other states to examine fostering their own helplines like this. So I'm excited to tell you about it. There's a couple of things to think about. One is it's a helpline. It's not a crisis line. There's lots of crisis response. You can call 911 if you feel safe enough to. You could call hotlines for mental health issues. You could call an ambulance. But this is the line where we talk to people before or maybe even after, when they're realizing my partner is giving me an ultimatum. I want to do something different, and I can talk to someone free in an anonymous, confidential way. So we get calls from people who do harm in their intimate partnerships who have for 20, 25 years and never told anyone. We get calls from young people who are dating for the first time who got feedback that they really didn't have sexual consent and they don't know what their dating partner was talking about. And we get calls from people who just want to do better in relationship. We also get calls from survivors who want to know, if my partner really is changing, what does that process look like? And what should I expect? And really, is it me? And we are really skilled responders who screen for to help survivors come to understand what's happening in their relationship. We also, the last group that we get calls from are community members. They could be family members, or they could be professionals. Because, hey, I'm a trauma therapist, and what's required is 3 hours of domestic violence, and that's not going to cut it. And so we get lots of professionals who call us to learn the in-depth knowledge base that we have on the process of change. And then Michelle,
Jack,
go ahead.
I'm sorry, what is the name of your program?
It's called A Call for Change.
Okay.
And there's a couple things I'm hoping you could talk about, Michelle. When we first were starting this program, people had these suspicions, which your listeners might have. One, nobody would ever call. Two, if they did call, they're just calling to manipulate, right? And three, all right, let's say they call, they'll get forgiven and feel like they can do it again, and you're just enabling them. So I'm wondering, that's not how it turned out at all. And I'm wondering, Michelle, if you can talk about like who you are, where you came from, and what this experience working on the helpline's really been like.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jack. Yes, as you said, my name is Michelle Harris. I am the program manager for a Call for Change helpline. The helpline launched in 2021, and my work prior to this was in a tandem field working in domestic violence. And I was in the same department at BHN where this program was launched at Behavioral Health Network, and was offered an opportunity to work with folks who are harmful. And my background is based in domestic violence services. I have been in the field for approximately 15 years, and I spent a lot of time in shelter. And something that really drew me to this process was hearing folks in shelter say, you know, all of the work is on me to create a space of safety for myself, my family, and my children. And I've also lost community by being uprooted and now living in shelter. What other options are there for me? And at the time, working in shelter, there were none. And that was a ongoing dilemma that I felt was never being answered. Their questions were never being answered. And so when this project kind of fell into my lap, I jumped at the opportunity to become a responder and hear about the different way of being, which is through accountable, compassionate conversations. And Jack was saying, we expected 50 calls within the first year.
Did you get
We exceeded.
50 calls? Did you get 50 calls?
We got 250 calls.
But
And that was
Michelle, how did people even hear about you, number one? And how did you screen the calls, or you just take any call in?
So I'll answer your first question. When the program was launched, the pilot was launched, there were various ways of outreach. There were billboards, word of mouth. Folks on the team really did a big push to outreach this program across the state of Massachusetts. And we were able to really create a good amount of feedback from folks who wanted more information about the helpline. And so in that way, we were able to watch our call volume. And as I was saying, yes, we received 250 calls within that first year. And we do take calls from folks who are, as Jack was saying, harmful, folks who are survivors, professionals, and community members. Those calls, of course, if they're not appropriate for our line, we will refer out. So in that way, it is a sort of a screening, but we always want to bring in opportunity for folks to share why they're calling and then make that discernment.
How long would you say does the average call last? Or it depends.
Sure. So the average call I'm finding with folks who harm and survivors are averaging an hour and a half.
Wow.
Yeah,
Oh my
so
God.
a big difference that we have between other referral lines, like the National Domestic Violence Hotline does take calls. They won't turn away people who are causing harm in their partnerships, but they're referring to what other states call batterers intervention, or what Massachusetts calls intimate partner abuse education. They're not doing the process of compassionate, accountable conversations. And that's
what does that
mean.
mean? Compassion.
Yes.
What
So
does that
our
mean?
responders are trained in an approach where based on how to create the conditions so that others can transform their deeply held beliefs or values from values of abusive values of dominance to those based on equity and respect. And we do that through a series of 12 strategies, 15 skills, and 9 interrupters, which they're trained over 40 hours before they get on the line, and then 2 additional hours every week, because it's an intense skill set. The cool thing is the skill set is useful for anyone. So we have people come from all over the country to learn compassionate, accountable conversation skills, because you could use these with your boss, you could use them with your teenager, you could use them with your partner. And we engage people in the process that they start to see themselves, they start to see the underlying beliefs and the permission they're giving themselves. And then we start giving them interrupting thoughts, and then they start practicing their interrupting themselves. We hold them accountable through our dialogue and our relationship. They start holding themselves accountable. And because we don't have a punishment model attached, and because there's no system of control attached, people think it won't work, but it actually does the reverse. It incentivizes people to call and tell the whole truth. So I'll give one example of, like, people make the presumption that someone really dangerous wouldn't call our line. If I think of the most dangerous caller that we know has called us, that most of us have talked to on the phone, different responders have talked to, this person's in the carceral system, has done time, is about to do a lot more time, is wearing a bracelet now, is currently very dangerous, and still call us, has a therapist, has a PO. And when we ask, why would you call? He was really quiet and reflected and said, because what I'm doing is wrong. And I've never told anyone the whole truth. In fact, my lawyer said, even he doesn't want to know the whole story. There is no place that people feel confident records won't be subpoenaed, where they could tell the entire truth and come to terms with who they've become. And that's our line. We provide those conditions so that someone can face who they've become and make a decision if they want to do it differently. So we answer the phone saying, hey, you've called the line for reliably safe, intimate partnerships. So if you're looking for something else, actually, it's not for you, right? If you're not interested in being accountable, we're not the line. They're going to get bored and hang up. And
Can they call back, Jack? Can they call more than once?
Oh yeah, Michelle, why don't you talk about that? That's one of our big lessons learned.
Yes, absolutely. You know, in the beginning, we felt and thought that having a person call back and have no time limit, for instance, on these calls, originally we had no time limit, would be a way in which they were not engaging with their partner or spouse in a way that was abusive. And so we had one very long phone call with an individual, and it turned out to be very exhaustive to the responder and to the person who's calling. And this person kept calling back every day, which we do welcome. And we welcome that in the beginning of the pilot, and we still welcome that for folks to continue the process of becoming reliably safe in their relationship. We know that this is going to be a lifelong commitment to become reliably safe. And so that is something we do invite every caller to do. And we limit those phone calls to an hour and a half, but we welcome the one-on-one, talk. So
in some quarters, up to almost 70% of the calls were return callers. Like that's not consistent every quarter. Our stats haven't stabilized yet because we haven't even been going for 2 years yet. So we're still watching our stats change. But what's happening is as every quarter proceeds, it's a greater and greater number of people calling who are the people doing harm in the relationship, and fewer community members. Or the volume of people who really need the help are calling. And is it okay if I share our number?
Oh, absolutely. I'm going to do that at the end. Yes, but do it now. Your name and number and how people can contact you, because we'll spread it around.
Okay, great. So 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, you can call a call for change at 1-877-898-3411. That's 1-877-898-3411, a call for change. You can call if you have questions about being reliably safe in your relationship, whether it's you, your partner, someone in your community or family. We're here for you.
Let me say something to both you and Michelle. I'm a criminal defense attorney, and I do defend batterers. And what sometimes happens in court, the judge finds them, it's assault, criminal charges are brought and they're held. And they are either sent to jail, which I have real problems about because it only makes the batterer angrier and angrier and angrier. And nothing really happens in most jails. In Norfolk County, we do have a program, but not in most. Or they're told you're on probation and you have to go to a batterer's intervention program. Okay, they're many weeks. They're very costly, very costly. Most of my clients cannot afford the batterer's intervention program. And there is a punishment, because if you don't fess up and say, yes, I'm a batterer, I did this and this and this, you have violated your conditions of probation and you are then sent to jail. And I have a real problem with that. And many clients have said to me, Susan, I'm not going to fess up. I'm not going to admit anything in that group. How do you handle that?
So I also have directed intimate partner abuse education groups in Massachusetts. And we know the power, there's nothing like the power of a group. But when it's a mandated group, or whether you accept a plea, but you didn't really mean it, it's going to take you 8 to 20 weeks to even say, well, I did that thing, but it wasn't really that bad. So you're going to be in the minimize, deny, blame shift, maybe half or the whole time. That's one of the tensions in going to a group when you're not really ready. What happens with this intervention is you're self-selecting in. So people call because they are selecting in. They're calling. In fact, it was very strange for me to go from a group setting to this setting, because you don't have to wait 20 weeks for somebody to say, I did it. They say it in the first call. And by the end of the first call, that's what really got you hooked, Michelle, right? Your first call.
Absolutely. My first call was someone who said, I am wondering if I am abusing my wife and I want to talk about that. And I said, okay, let me know what's going on for you. And he said, well, we differ, our politics are different, and we don't watch the same political TV shows. And so when, she wants to watch her show, I get really angry and I scare her and hit myself and throw things. And she has said this to me. And I said, well, that's a really good reflection that you're able to voice the harm that you've done. I want to ask you a question. Do you have other people in your family or your friends that you really respect, love, and value who have different political views? And he said, yes, I do. My brother. And I said, what happens when you guys disagree? And he said, we just agree to disagree. And I said, so you expressed also that you love your wife and that you respect her, but you treat her differently than, how you're treating your brother. And he got very silent. And at this point, this was one of my first calls. So I was kind of nervous that I had lost connection with this person, just that I was being very transparent and guiding this conversation. And he said, I think it's me. And after I got off the phone, I had a conversation with my staff colleagues, and that is where we want them. We know it's them, but when they're able to voice that we know it's them, that's the key point to, you can do this differently. You can be safe. You've made really unsafe choices in the past, and you have an opportunity here to create a different, safe, reliable relationship with your partner who you love and respect.
And the callers know that anything they say to you is confidential, that will not be reported to a court or to a PO or to anybody, or even to their spouse or their partner. Am I correct?
That's right. And
Correct.
people think that will make others unsafe, and it doesn't. It makes people tell the truth. Like
What do you mean? What do you mean, Jack?
Well, there's a fear. Like, people will say, if it's confidential, if you can't get the police to come, like if it's not being recorded, then they could hurt somebody and you couldn't help. So there's a couple of thinking errors in that. One, I and most of my colleagues who have been on hotlines for survivors have been on the phone with survivors when they're actively being harmed, and we couldn't help. That's part of the reality of this work. But in this situation, if it did happen, we could help de-escalate. But interestingly, the couple other countries who have lines like this, long established, like the UK or Australia, they often also have lessons learned for us of over like 20 years, which is if people are not calling us in the middle of an assault, it would be a de-escalation. Like if I were going to harm you, put my hands on your neck. If I was like, wait a second, let me get the phone, 877, I'm de-escalating. So like that would be, and then they would be on the phone with us with a chance to de-escalate. But people aren't actually calling in the middle of harm. They're calling when they realize I don't have to worry about a system of control coming to harm me, because we have people from the queer community, Black, Indigenous people of color who told us, and young people before we started this, if you're connected directly to the police, we won't call you, because we're afraid we'll die. And so we have made a decision as an advisory group that if someone told us their name, their full name, and their location, then all of TESLOF and all the requirements to report would kick in. So, but we say this is confidential and anonymous if we don't know your full name and location. And nobody discloses that because it's a major concern. People want to be able to speak freely.
Yes. Have you, do you have any data that domestic violence incidents have gone down since your program has been in effect?
Well, so we use principle-based evaluation. So the only things we can measure besides volume, repeat calls, are the things that happen on the calls. So like, so that scope is what we can't measure long-term impact. We could maybe look over 5 years, see if there's an associated reduction. We're in the pilot, but we can measure the impact we're having on the insight, the exclamations they make, the follow-up calls that they voluntarily disclose. This is what I did different. This is how I totally blew it. You advised me to do this. I didn't. It was a disaster, just how you said. And we
Yeah.
we record and measure all those things. And that's how we know things are changing. When people are self-selecting in, you have a different accountability relationship.
Absolutely. That's really, really important. Do you at all inform the courts that you exist? Do you inform probation? Do you do trainings with them? Attorneys, bar associations? I mean, I saw the article in the Globe and immediately called the number as if I were a client of yours. And then somebody got back to me, and I'm so grateful. And I took it to our domestic violence roundtable here in
Great.
Brooklyn and to the police, and I gave them copies of the article. But I would like
Yes,
to know
but
how. Go
we
ahead.
were on national public radio a couple weeks ago for 6 million listeners. That really helped. But we do, Michelle actually works in the outreach area of this project. And so I'll let you talk. We do all that. Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, we do. We do a lot of outreach to law enforcement, probation, and clinicians, mental health professionals. We're now working with the Bureau of Substance Abuse and Addiction Services. So we are doing a hard push to all professional social
Good,
service.
good. What about lawyers?
Yeah,
Yes.
Lawyers
please
need to
share.
know
Please.
about you.
Yes.
Yes.
And
This is
judges, you know, they have a judges conference. I think it's coming up in June. There's a 3-day conference. You might want to contact somebody. I don't know who, and get on their agenda just to introduce yourselves and tell them about this fabulous program. Because if one of my clients is put on probation, say a continuance without a finding,
yes.
I'm only going to jump up now and say, Judge, are you aware of a call for change? If something happens, I've informed my client, I've given him or her or them the information so that before they do anything else that may be a poor choice, they can get some support. I'm definitely going to do that.
Great.
And
The one
district attorneys need to know about you. I
They
don't think
all need to know about it. The one thing that will be hard in a criminal legal setting is we won't check off a form, right? It has to be totally internally motivated. We won't be saying, yes, we'll sign off to prove you called. Like they'll just, like a PO can ask, what did you talk about? And what are you working on? And they won't be able to make it up. Like,
right.
but we're not going to be able to do, other services have sign-offs. So that's just one tension that I anticipate, but it's a really important resource that people need.
You need to get the word out, and if we can help you in any way, we will do. In the last minute, is there anything else you'd like the viewers of the Safety Net to know?
One thing I want to say is people set the bar like between abusive relationships or healthy. And we're saying reliably safe relationships is the stopping point before you get to healthy. We're here to help people become reliably safe.
What does that mean? What does that mean?
Reliably safe means that you can accept feedback. You can be told that what you're not people can be mad at you without you getting madder. Like you can become a reliably safe partner and be still terrible in relationship, but you're safe enough to be told. And that is what our goal is, to make people reliably safe. Sometimes we see, I want a healthy relationship. And we're like, that's great. Let's make sure your relationship's reliably safe first. That's what we're here for.
Michelle, do you have anything to add?
I will just add that including our 877-898-3411, folks can also email us at help@acallforchangehelpline.org. And somebody will get back to them within 24 hours. We'll
give that to Adam to put at the bottom of the show. I want to thank both of you, Jack and Michelle, from A Call for Change. This is really life-changing for all of us, not just those who are abused and those who are abusing, but the families and the friends who also become implicated in these nests and these webs of violence. So thank you. I hope you'll come back. And if there's anything we can do to help you promote A Call for Change, call on us. This is Susan Howards. That's it for the Safety Net today. Thank you all.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.